life for Palestine rather than death, which is normally that with which their flag is associated. The Palestinian people are dying for the assistance of the people of Canada. I hope you will support the various projects which the great anti-war movement represented in your auditorium this evening are planning. I hope you'll go to our website, vivapalestina.org, and see how we organize that convoy. You can't drive to Gaza, but you could fly to Cairo, and you could rent trucks, and you could buy the material to put on the trucks, and you could fly the Canadian flag whether Jason Kenney likes it or not, and you could head for the gate at Rafah, and the Egyptian government wouldn't dare to turn you away. Let's spread this example. Let's have convoy after convoy after convoy arriving in Gaza, not just to feed the people, not just practically to come to their aid, but to lift their spirits and their morale, so that they know the people of Canada are not their enemies. The people of the United States are not their enemies, any more than the people of Britain are their enemies. It's our governments who have decided to make them their enemies. And their governments don't speak for us. They're not doing it in our name. Now, the war, of course, is wider, much wider than Palestine. In Iraq, more than 1 million people have lost their lives in the war and occupation over the last 7 years or so. But in the 12 or more years before that, another 1 million Iraqis lost their lives through the inhuman sanctions imposed principally by London and Washington. Hundreds of thousands of foreign soldiers still occupy the great Iraq, keeping it divided, turning it in upon itself, turning the people one against the other, one religion, one confession against the other, one region against the other, dividing and ruling for now. But the day will come when they will leave Iraq, just like they left Vietnam, under the fire of the people of that country, determined to be free of foreign occupation. In the case of Afghanistan, you in Canada have a vital interest. I tell you this, nobody has ever successfully occupied Afghanistan. Not even Alexander the Great successfully occupied Afghanistan. And Jason Kenney, you ain't no Alexander the Great. Young Canadian soldiers are losing their lives, giving their life's blood in a conflict that's not only doomed, but was never necessary and will have to be brought to an end by a political and negotiated settlement sooner or later, and it's better that it's sooner, because British young men, American young men from the US Armed Forces, Canadian young men are giving their lives in a conflict started by George Bush and Tony Blair, which need never have taken the form and the shape that it has. I don't have time on this link to develop the case against the Afghan war in detail. I just say this to you. The resistance to foreign occupation in Afghanistan will only grow. It will not grow smaller. No matter how many Afghans are killed, no matter how many Afghan wedding parties are bombed, no matter how many Afghan towns and villages are reduced to rubble and broken mud, no matter how much so-called aid is given by the occupation forces to the corrupt political class which steals half of it in Kabul, the resistance to foreign occupation in Afghanistan will grow and grow and grow, as it did during previous occupations by the then Soviet Union, by the British, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Because the Afghans will never agree to foreigners ruling their country. And it's better we realize that now rather than down the line when hundreds, maybe thousands more of our young soldiers have died. We must stop conflating the real problem of international terrorism associated with the Al-Qaeda phenomenon with the ordinary Afghan resistance. They are not the same thing. The Al-Qaeda bin Ladenists definitely want to strike out for their pan-Islamist ideology at targets throughout the world. The Afghans only want their country back. The Palestinian resistance only want their country back. The Iraqi resistance only want their country back. That means we can negotiate with them. That means we must negotiate with them. And we will. You see, Mr. Harper and Mr. Kenny fetishize the word Hamas today. Yesterday it was Hezbollah. Last Thursday, who met Hezbollah? No less or more a figure than the Right Honourable Tony Blair. Well, he had to meet them, didn't he? He's the peace envoy to the Middle East. I can almost hear you laughing. Not since Caligula appointed his horse a proconsul of Rome has there been a more inappropriate appointment than Tony Blair as a peace envoy to the Middle East. And Tony Blair's not a horse. Well, he's maybe one part of a horse. One part of a horse's anatomy. But who was he meeting last week? He was meeting the very same Hezbollah that Mr. Harper and Mr. Kenny would have you believe are beyond the pale, and that anyone who talks to them is somehow aiding and abetting terrorism. Is Mr. Blair going to be banned from Canada now? The British government has just announced that it will resume discussions on an official level with the Lebanese resistance movement, Hezbollah. Will British ministers be arrested or deported or declared inadmissible on coming to Canada on the grounds that they met with Hezbollah and discussed the problems of the region with them? How foolish this policy of drawing up lists of the banned and the damned. Because of course, today's banned is tomorrow's negotiating partner and the day after's government that we have to recognize. Archbishop Makarios, Jomo Kenyatta, Jerry Adams, Martin McGuinness, they were all on the list of the banned and the damned, but they all had to be negotiated with, and they all ended up taking tea at Buckingham Palace with the Queen. Well, not yet Jerry Adams and Martin McGuinness, but they took tea in the White House Oval Office with President Obama, which is probably a better place to hang out in any case. So the day will come when Jason Kenney and Stephen Harper will be the last men standing, they and their Likud allies in Israel, the hard right of Netanyahu and Lieberman, people who want to ethnically cleanse not just the occupied territories, but even ethnically cleanse the Israeli passport holders who happen to be ethnically Palestinian inside their own borders. The day will come